No, there's no truth to what he's saying. It's not even that he's using old intel. What's happening right now, and it's happening across the board, is what I call mirror imaging, meaning that Ukraine is right now in a state of imminent collapse. Their military is becoming virtually dysfunctional, and one of the reasons is they're running out of manpower. So Ukraine is going around and literally kidnapping people off the streets, including 14 and 16-year-old boys who are showing up on the front line with 3 days of training. So they're kidnapped from the streets of Odessa, given 3 days of training. They end up in Bakhmut and they die. This is happening in massive numbers. And this is a public relations problem for the Ukrainians. So what we're doing is we're mirror imaging the problems of Ukraine onto the Russians. But the Russians aren't doing that. The Russians mobilized 300,000 men in September. The vast majority of those men are still undergoing training. So the notion that these are poorly trained troops is just absurd in the extreme. These were military reservists who already had served in the military, had a modicum of experience, and instead of being thrown straight into the fight, they're being sent to a training area where for now, September, October, November, December, January, February, we're coming up on 7 months of training to get them ready to form on the battlefield. So, Mark Milley is just making this up. It's not what's happening. The Russians are extraordinarily well equipped. They have modern equipment, modern tanks, modern artillery. They have body armor. They have everything they need, and they're trained to do this job. These are not poorly trained troops, and they're not throwing them in human wave assaults. The fact of the matter is that the casualty ratio right now is insane. Normally in a war, the offense versus defense is you want a 3-to-1 advantage from the offense to defense because generally speaking, you're going to take more casualties than a defender. So you need that kind of advantage. The Russians right now are operating with parity in numbers when it comes to infantry, but superiority in numbers when artillery. But on the casualty ratio, they're killing Ukrainians sometimes as high as 16-to-1 in a day. Sometimes it drops down to 10, sometimes it drops down to 8. But what that means is if you on the best day the Ukrainians are having, for every 800 Ukrainians that die, they're killing 100 Russians. But on the worst day, for every 100 Russians that die, 1,600 Ukrainians die. And the Ukrainians are having a lot of bad days, not so many good days, but even their good day is a nightmare. It's Ukraine that's chewing through its troops at a rate that's unimaginable. And I think it was Lllойдом Ostіном that threw out a number, casualty number of 100,000. I think in the same presentation, talked about 100,000 dead. But he knows that's a lie. He knows that he was reported to by General Залужний of the Ukrainian army last month that Ukraine had suffered close to 250,000 dead, on top of which there are 83,000 missing, most of whom are dead, which means that Ukraine has suffered around 320,000 dead. That's the honest number. But Lllойдом Ostіnom can't be honest about that because that's a number that just boggles the mind. If you look at the combatant losses of the United States in World War II, in both the Pacific Front and the European Front, we didn't lose 320,000 dead. We lost fewer than that in terms of combatant. That's people who die in combat. The Ukrainians have lost 320,000 combatant deaths in 1 year. That's a ridiculous number. That's a sickening number. And it reflects the reality of what's going on the ground in Ukraine today. And Lllойdом Ostіnom and Mark Milley can't be honest about that because if they were, American people would say, then we need to bring this war to an end because this is just resulting in the death of people that we claim to be supporting.